Hello, my name is Adam Zidane and I will be your host tonight. Today we will be mainly talking about forensics and interesting stuff you will benefit a lot from. So, first of all, we have something called RFLP. This stands for Restriction Fragment Length Polymorphism, and it's a process which cuts DNA into pieces and analyzes them. There are steps to RFLP, and they are firstly to get a sample DNA and adding restriction enzymes in order for it to produce restriction fragments. Then we use something called electrophoresis, which separates the restriction fragments, making them produce patterns. Then added to that are alkaline solution. They're added to the gel in order for the DNA to be copied on the paper. Then the paper gets exposed to a solution that makes it radioactive. Then there lies a photographic film on the top of the paper and exposed by the radioactivity in order to make an image corresponding to the DNA brands. So, enough talk about the RFLP. Let's move on to the STR. Now, there are major similarities, however, slight differences between the two. So, first of all, STR stands for short tandem repeat, and it's the same exact thing as RFLP. However, it needs a small amount of DNA. So, then comes PCR, which is the process of duplicating DNA billions of times, and it is somewhat related to STR. The relation between them is that in STR it is cutting the DNA, which is also making two copies of it. However, in PCR it's duplicating, which makes the DNA bigger and not making copies of it. Moving on to another thing which is called CODIS. This is a computer program used by the police to store genetic info, and it stands for Combined DNA Index System. This began with the DNA testing in the late 1980s, and the purpose of it was to store the genetic info of the convicted, so if they were suspects once again, they do not keep searching for who should be accused. This also helps in finding the real murderer or thief. Its success is very widely known throughout the world and is used by many people in investigations that have to do, of course, with the police. However, some risks might be taken with the combined DNA index system, and it could be that if the program went wrong and convicted someone else, this would be really unjust. One of my exonerees I chose to present to you today was Joyce Ann Brown. She was born in 1947 and was convicted of murder and robbery of a store, and she was sentenced for life in prison because of the identification testimony of the victim's wife in 1981. Later on, by a year, the police arrested Renee Michelle and Taylor Dawson. They were both from Denver, and they admitted that they murdered the guy in the store. However, they also said that Joyce Ann Brown was not with them in the murder crime. The court was not convinced at all with what Renee and Taylor had to say to them, so Joyce was still convicted because the DNA that was found in the store belonged to her. Plus, the victim's wife testified that Joyce killed him. In November of 1989, she was not convicted anymore. She could not believe that her life stood in the hands of 11 human beings. And obviously, they are the jury. She was exonerated in 1990 and spent 9 years in prison. She was innocent, thus, she still spent those 9 years of her life wasted in prison. The mistake that was made is in this conviction is that the victim's wife was not sure whether Joyce Ann Brown murdered her husband or not the two women that went in and killed him and also robbed him. Uh, um, Renee, Michelle, and Taylor Dawson, they both looked like Joyce Ann Brown. So when the wife saw her on camera, she believed that Joyce Ann Brown was the one that killed him. So scientists looked back also in the case of investigation, and they realized that there has been a mistake made that cost Joyce Ann Brown 9 years of her life. Back then, the DNA science was not that professionalized. Later on, they looked more deeply in her case, and that was making her study case very, very important. They looked back and they found out that the scientist was held that was holding her case uh, did make a major mistake. They found that the DNA that was there in the crime scene did not belong to Joyce Ann Brown, and that was the one thing that was held against her plus the testimony. Basic background about Joyce. She was living in a family consisting of 10 people in a black area of Dallas, Texas. Her parents took good care of her, and they made her stay away from drugs. They were concerned about her because of the hood they lived in. She promised for herself she would have a good life. She also made a lot of contributions to the people of her area. Uh, no one would ever think that she would kill anyone. It was a shocking story for all of her family, and that's what they didn't want for her kid to end up in prison for 9 years, and she was totally innocent. It's just a sad story that people should be guilty for nothing. She was innocent, and I believe she was really blamed for that. Well, in my opinion, I find the thought of someone's life being in the hands of 11 jury members and a team of forensic scientists which failed her is very scary. Most of these exonerates lives has been destroyed due to mistakes done by these people. Therefore, I believe that the approach to convicting individuals should be different. More than one jury should judge, and more than one team of forensic scientists should take a look at the hard evidence to reduce the number of wrongfully convicted people. I was your host, Adam Zidane. Thank you. Goodbye.